In my last video, I warned about a 40% chance of $200 oil by June. Hundreds of you watched, many shared, some prepared. Since then, the situation has gotten worse. Not just the war, the infrastructure. And I need to tell you something most analysts aren't saying. Even if Trump ends the war tomorrow, which he says could happen in 2 to 3 weeks, the damage is already done. This isn't a 6-month crisis that ends when the fighting stops. This is a 3 to 5 year transformation of the global energy market. And Cambodia, which imports 100% of its fuel, will feel every single year of it. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what the next 5 years look like. Not speculation. Evidence. I'm going to show you why oil prices will stay high for years, even after the war ends. I'm going to show you the timeline, year by year, of what Cambodia faces. And I'm going to show you who wins and who loses in this new reality. This is the most important video I've made about Cambodia's future. By the end, you'll understand why the decisions you make in the next 90 days will determine whether you thrive or struggle for the next 5 years. Let's start with what happened in the last 30 days that changed everything. Here's what most people don't understand about infrastructure damage. When a factory shuts down temporarily, you can restart it quickly. Flip some switches. Warm up the systems. Back in business. But when infrastructure gets destroyed, not disrupted, destroyed, the timeline changes completely. Let me give you specific examples from the last month. On March 18th, Iran struck Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG terminal with drones. This facility produces 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas. 20% of the entire world. The damage wiped out 17% of Qatar's total LNG export capacity. Now here's the critical part. Repairs will take 5 years. Not 5 weeks, not 5 months. 5 years. That means until 2031, 17% of Qatar's LNG capacity is offline. Europe depends on Qatar LNG. Asia depends on it. Everyone depends on it. And it's gone until 2031. On March 27th, Israel struck Iran's Mobarake steel facility in Isfahan and Khuzestan Steel in Avaz. These aren't just steel plants. They're connected to power infrastructure, storage facilities, the entire industrial network. Total damage across the Middle East from this war, $25 billion. That's not a number you repair quickly. That's years of reconstruction. You might think, okay, Iran and Qatar are damaged, but Russia can fill the gap, right? Wrong. Ukrainian drones have been systematically destroying Russian oil export capacity. Current estimate, nearly half of Russia's export infrastructure is damaged or destroyed. Russia was expecting to make a fortune from high oil prices. Instead, they can't even get their oil to market. So the 3 potential sources to replace Middle East supply, Qatar, LNG, Middle East oil, Russian oil, are all compromised. Now here's the part that extends the timeline even further. When you shut down oil and gas infrastructure, it doesn't just sit there waiting patiently. It degrades. Pipelines corrode, valves seize, storage tanks deteriorate, pressure systems fail. Oil facilities aren't designed to be idle. They're designed to run continuously. The longer they sit unused, the more damage accumulates. Right now, Gulf oil producers are doing what's called shut-ins, manually closing valves to stop the flow. Every day those valves stay closed, the harder it becomes to reopen them. Corrosion builds, sediment accumulates. Systems that were designed for constant flow start breaking down. An MIT energy economist said this week, and I'm paraphrasing, "A week ago, I would have said if the war stops, the long-term implications are small. But now we're seeing infrastructure actually being destroyed. The ramifications will be long-lived. Long-lived means years, not months. Even if Trump announces peace tomorrow, even if Iran reopens the Strait of Hormuz next week, it would still take months just to restart production safely. And years to return to pre-war capacity. This is the new reality. Now I'm going to tell you something that will make you angry. But you need to understand it, because it explains why high prices will persist long after the war ends. The top oil producers, Saudi Arabia, UAE, US shale companies, are making record profits right now. Let me show you the math. Before the war, Brent crude oil was $70 per barrel. Today it's trading around $105 to $115 per barrel. That's a 50 to 60% increase. For Saudi Arabia, which produces about 10 million barrels per day, that's an extra $350 to $450 million per day compared to pre-war prices per day. For US shale producers, it's the most profitable environment they've seen since 2014. Now put yourself in their position. You're making 50 to 60% more profit with less production because you don't have to compete with Iranian or Russian supply. The war has effectively removed your competitors from the market. Would you rush to increase production and flood the market? Would you work overtime to bring prices back down? Of course not. You would keep production tight, keep prices high, and maximize profits for as long as possible. This is capitalism. I'm not judging it. I'm explaining it. High prices benefit everyone who can still produce oil. So even when infrastructure can be repaired, even when production can restart, it won't restart fast, because there's no financial incentive to crash prices. Saudi Arabia doesn't want oil at $70 again. They want it at 100 plus. US producers don't want competition from Iran and Russia. They want the market to themselves. The war gave them exactly what they wanted. High prices, reduced competition, massive profits. Why would they rush to end that? Here's how this plays out politically. Trump says the war could end in 2 to 3 weeks. Markets react. Oil prices drop a bit on the news. But then production doesn't ramp up fast. Repairs take longer than expected. Supply stays tight. Prices drift back up. Trump declares victory. The war is over. We won. But oil stays expensive. Why? Repairs take time. Logistics are complicated. We're working on it. Meanwhile, producers keep making record profits. Saudi Arabia isn't going to complain. US companies aren't going to complain. The only people who suffer are the consumers, countries like Cambodia that import 100% of their fuel. And frankly, the producers don't care about Cambodia's fuel costs. They care about their quarterly earnings. This is the game. And Cambodia is not a player. Cambodia is the paying customer. Let me give you one more piece of evidence. Right now, even with Trump talking about ending the war, shipping insurance for the Strait of Hormuz remains at crisis levels. Why? Because maritime workers are traumatized. They've watched ships get hit. They've seen colleagues die. Even if the war ends, even if Iran officially reopens the strait, sailors don't just forget that. Insurance companies don't just say, okay, back to normal prices. The risk premium is baked in for years. That means shipping costs stay high for years, which means oil delivered to Asia stays expensive for years, which means Cambodia pays premium prices for years. All of this compounds. Damaged infrastructure takes years to repair. Producers have no incentive to flood the market. Shipping costs stay elevated from risk premiums. Financial markets price in long-term disruption. It all points to the same conclusion. High oil prices for 3 to 5 years minimum. So what does this mean specifically for Cambodia? Let me map out the next 5 years, year by year. Best estimates based on current trajectory. Year 1, 2026. The crisis peak. This year, right now. If the war continues through June, as analysts predict has a 40% probability, oil hits $150 to $200 per barrel. That means diesel in Cambodia reaches 12 to 14,000 riels per litre. Currently 7,100. LPG reaches 5 to 6,000 riels per litre. Currently 3,200. Gasoline reaches 9 to 10,000 riels per litre. Currently 5,450. What happens at these prices? Transport costs double. Motor taxi fares up another 50% on top of the 20% they've already increased. Food prices surge 20 to 40% because everything depends on transport. Tourism drops to near zero. Flights are 5 times more expensive. Hotels empty. Restaurants close. Small businesses that depend on transport, delivery, logistics, anything fuel-intensive, face a choice: adapt or close. Farmers face input costs that make many crops unprofitable. Rice and rubber exports threatened. Government continues cutting all possible fuel taxes, already at zero, and subsidizing where possible. But there's a limit. By the end of 2026, the landscape has changed completely. Businesses that adapted early survived. Businesses that waited for return to normal, many are gone. Year 2, 2027. Stabilization, but not relief. The war ends, let's say by mid-2026. Infrastructure repairs begin, but they're not complete. Qatar's LNG terminal, still offline, won't be fixed until 2031. Middle East facilities slowly coming back online, but slowly. Russia still hampered by Ukrainian strikes and sanctions. Oil stabilizes in the $80 to $120 range. Not back to 70, not even close. But at least it's not rising anymore. Diesel in Cambodia, 8 to 10,000 riels per litre. Down from peak, but still way up from pre-crisis. LPG, 4 to 5,000 riels. Better than peak, but double pre-crisis. Gasoline, 6 to 8,000 riels. Same pattern. What this means, the businesses that died in year 1, they're gone. Not coming back. The businesses that adapted, now operating in new normal mode. Leaner, more efficient, less fuel dependent. New businesses emerging, built from day one for high fuel prices. These are the future winners. Communities that built local food networks, reduced transport dependency, switched to alternatives, they're stabilizing. Communities that waited for old prices to return, still struggling, still hoping, getting left behind. Year 3, 2028. The new normal emerges. More infrastructure restored. Not all, but more. Oil drifts down to $70 to $90 per barrel range. Still double pre-war levels, but people have stopped comparing to pre-war. This is the price now. Diesel, 6,000 to 8,000 riels per litre. LPG, 3,000 to 4,000 riels. Gasoline, 5,000 to 6,000 riels. What this means, winners and losers are now clearly defined. Winners, businesses that produce locally. Businesses that eliminated fuel dependency. Businesses that adapted in year 1 and survived to year 3. Losers, anyone still waiting for $70 oil. Anyone whose business model requires cheap transport. Anyone dependent on tourism at pre-crisis levels. Cambodia's economy looks different, not worse necessarily. Different. More local production, more community-based trade, more alternative energy, less import dependence. Some of this is good, some is painful, but it's the reality. Years 4 to 5, 20, 29 to 20, 30. Recovery? Question mark. Will things return to normal? Depends on what you mean by normal. Will oil hit $70 again? Maybe. If renewables advance fast, if demand destruction kicks in, if new supply comes online. But will Cambodia's economy return to pre-war structure? Probably not. The businesses that died are gone. The businesses that adapted have new models. The skills people learned, local production, resource efficiency, community cooperation, those don't disappear just because oil gets cheaper. In some ways, Cambodia might be stronger, less vulnerable to external shocks, more self-reliant, more resilient. But that only happens if Cambodia adapts during years 1 through 3. If Cambodia spends years 1 through 3 waiting and suffering, hoping for rescue that never comes, then years 4 and 5 are just more struggling. The choice is being made right now, in 2026. Adapt or wait. Build or hope. Act or suffer. Let me be very specific about who thrives and who struggles in this timeline. Businesses that will die. Transport heavy delivery services that can't pass costs to customers. Most will close by end of year 1. Import-dependent retail that relies on cheap shipping. Already struggling, most won't survive year 2. Tourism businesses that depend on international visitors. Trickler visitors might return in year 2 or 3, but nowhere near pre-crisis levels for 5 years. Restaurants with high transport costs for ingredients, especially ones serving international cuisine with imported ingredients. Many close year 1. Construction businesses dependent on transport-heavy materials and equipment. Projects stall. Companies fold. Businesses that will thrive. Local food producers, farmers markets, community-supported agriculture. Anything that eliminates transport. Businesses built around efficiency, minimal waste, minimal transport, maximum local sourcing, alternative energy providers, solar installers, biosystems, anything that replaces fossil fuels, digital services that eliminate physical transport entirely, online businesses, remote services, businesses that solve new problems created by the crisis, fuel alternatives, local logistics, efficiency consulting, communities that adapt. Rural communities with existing food production. They already grow their own food. Transport costs matter less. Communities that organize quickly. Food co-ops. Shared transport. Resource pooling. Collective adaptation. Communities with strong social networks. When money is tight, relationships matter. Networks provide what money can't. Communities that suffer. Urban communities dependent entirely on imported food and fuel-intensive services. No local production. No alternatives. Isolated communities without social cohesion. Every family struggling alone. No cooperation. No shared resources. Communities waiting for government rescue or return to normal. Neither is coming fast enough. The critical insight. This isn't about rich versus poor. This is about adapted versus waiting. You can be wealthy and struggle if your wealth depends on businesses that require cheap fuel. You can be modest income and thrive if you built local resilience early. The dividing line is, did you adapt in year 1 or did you wait? Those who adapt in 2026 will position themselves for years 2 through 5. Those who wait through 2026 hoping things get better They fall further behind every month. So here's where we are. The war might end in weeks. Trump says 2 to 3 weeks is possible. But the war ending doesn't mean the crisis ending. The infrastructure is destroyed. 5 years to repair Qatar's LNG. Years to rebuild Middle East facilities. Russia's capacity degraded. The producers have no incentive to flood the market and crash prices. They're making record profits. They want to keep it that way. Cambodia faces 3 to 5 years of high fuel prices minimum. Not a spike. Not a temporary shock. A transformation. The next 90 days, the rest of 2026, will determine who survives and who doesn't. Will you adapt now or wait and hope? Will you build resilience or assume rescue is coming? Will you change your business model or pray for old prices to return? I can't make that choice for you. But I can tell you, waiting is the highest risk strategy available. Next week, I'm releasing solutions, not theories. Practical, specific, actionable. What to do, how to do it, where to start. But I needed you to understand the timeline first, because if you think this is temporary, you won't make the changes necessary to survive. Now you know, this is 3 to 5 years. Plan accordingly. Subscribe so you don't miss next week's video. Share this with anyone who needs to understand what's coming. And start thinking about what adaptation looks like for you. See you next week.